The foundation of faith worked out well. Let's see what happened with the foundation of substance centering on the second son, Ham. Okay? In order that Ham could stand as the central figure for the foundation of substance, the position of the second son had to be restored. To accomplish this, Ham had to become one in heart with Noah, who had successfully accomplished the foundation of faith. This father-son relationship was important. Yeah. Ham had to establish that father-son relationship so that he could inherit the faith of his father. His father had great faith, despite all the mockery and opposition that he faced for 120 years. He got that ark built. He got it built, and he, according to the design that God gave him, and it floated. Yep, it floated, and he got all the animals in there 2 by 2, and he saved the lives of his wife and his 3 sons and their wives, eight people in his family. So Noah, as the father, had demonstrated his ability to protect his family and to get them into the ark, and so that they would not also die. And if they had followed their own understanding, they would have died along with everyone else. So, having seen his father demonstrate his faith, Ham needed to respect that faith and to unite with that faith. So let's see what actually took place here. Let's look at Genesis 9, verses 20 to 26, and see what happened. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. So he began to farm, all right? He planted a vineyard, and he drank the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. So he drank his own wine, okay? He made it, and he drank it, okay? And then he was lying inside his tent, okay? He was lying inside his tent, and he was naked. He was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren without. So he told his older brother Shem and his younger brother Japheth about that. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. So they turned their backs to their father, and they had the garment on their shoulder, so like this, and they walked it back so as to cover their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew that what his younger son had done unto him, and he said, "Cursed be Canaan." Okay, that Canaan kind of gets a raw deal here because he's the son of Ham. He's the son of Ham. "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall be unto his brethren." And he says, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant, and God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all of the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So, yes, someone asked something? Okay, Carrie?
Yeah, I just can't help but think about the king and in terms of his attendance of father, and how when the Han mother was being embarrassed by father, he told us stories of such, but just how magnificent that was in terms of the second king's attendance of true father, how that was such a restoration of that. Not that he needed to restore that, but I just keep that's in direct contrast to me. It helps me understand the sin of Ham. Just wanted to say that.
When I was, do we have time? Okay, I'll do it anyway. When I was in the seminary, and Father would often come to Berrytown, okay? And then one time the Korean leaders came rushing toward me. "You got to help us, Tim, you got to help us." And Father, I guess it was summertime, and Father was walking around the campus in what Koreans would consider to be his underwear. Now, frankly, from an American perspective, it was not really underwear. It was, baggy, short, white pants and baggy sort of a shirt there. But to them, he was walking around in his underwear, and they were apoplectic, frankly. They didn't know because if foreigners saw this, foreigners were going to lose faith and they were all going to run away, and the whole province would fail. And I had to explain to everyone that this was okay, in the sort of Asian cultural context and everything like that. And it was frankly, from Westerners, it was no big deal at all. At least I don't think anyone fainted or anything to see Father like that. But there was a tendency for people around Father to be embarrassed by some of the things that he did. Of course, there were at least a couple of other incidents that I have heard of. I was not there, where Father actually took off all of his clothes, and this was, if it had been me, if I had been there, I would have been deeply, deeply moved to see this body that had suffered so much in Hungnam prison, and I imagine there are scars there. I would have been frankly moved to tears, I think, if I had actually been allowed to be in that situation. I hope, I'm pretty sure I would not be embarrassed, though, by what Father would do in that kind of situation. But there was this tendency of people around Father to look at him in a very humanistic way. And then this gets back to what I said before about the messianic expectation. And those who come from a Christian background and who, frankly, the time that we are even too early to talk, perhaps even within our mother's wombs, have some kind of an idea of this messianic expectation, and those who come at it from a much more kind of horizontal point of view. And not that is bad, okay? I'm glad that these people, these patriots, responded to Father's patriotism and about his hope for Korea. I'm very glad that they did that. Otherwise, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. But it would have been better if the people in Korea, the Christians in Korea who really had a messianic expectation, had responded to Father as they should have. And I think things would have gone a lot better. And I don't think that they would have been embarrassed by this kind of thing. I don't see in the Bible where the disciples were embarrassed by anything that Jesus did. Do you? I don't know. I don't see it. Anyway, just to add to Carrie's comment there, yeah. You said that you're reading Dr. Pak's autobiography, right? Dr. Pak did not come from a Christian background. You'll see in that autobiography. Just to point that out, okay? All right. So anyway, Ham had to respect his father's faith because his father Noah had demonstrated incredible faith despite all the mockery, all the opposition for 120 years. So, but we see here though that Ham is embarrassed by his father's nakedness, and he doesn't even deal with it himself. He goes out and he's multiplying evil here. He's going out, and his brothers learn about it, and they are also embarrassed because Ham is embarrassed, and then they cover Noah's nakedness out of this motivation of embarrassment, and this is where the sin occurred. Not that if I see my father lying naked somewhere, that I should not put some kind of a cover over him so he doesn't catch cold. That's a different situation. I would be doing that out of love and out of filial piety to my father. But here Ham was demonstrating that he was ashamed of his father. And that's the difference. See, the motivation is very different as to what I would do if I were to find my father lying somewhere drunk and naked. It would be all right for me to cover him out of filial piety, because otherwise he might catch cold. Yeah? So here, what happened is that the brothers, especially Ham, and then from Ham then to the older brother and the naked brother, they were ashamed, as Adam was ashamed of his nakedness after the fall, and covered it with an apron of fig leaves. So this nakedness was analogous to Adam before the fall, where he was not ashamed, and apparently Noah was not ashamed of his nakedness. And there are only 8 people in the world, all right? Okay? It's not like the police are going to come and arrest you for public indecency or anything like that. There are only 8 people in the world. And 3 of them are your sons. Another one is your wife. And the sons' wives, they can handle it, right? So what's the big deal here? But Ham was ashamed. And so he became, this was sort of, in a sense, a recreation of the fall of Adam and Eve, where there was a shame towards the nakedness of Noah. So 9:21 says here that and he drank with the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent, and Ham was ashamed, and so they covered it up. So here there was not a unity of heart between Noah and Ham. And so Ham could not stand as the central figure of the foundation of substance, because the whole idea of the foundation of substance is that first there's the foundation of faith. That's the vertical foundation. And then you take that and you put it out horizontally, just extend it out horizontally. So then that horizontal foundation of substance would have been done between Ham and the Abel figure and Shem in the Cain position, but Ham never stood in that position of the Abel figure, united with his father. So this was the problem there. So let's look back. What is sin? The definition of sin. Definition of sin is a violation of heavenly law, which is committed when a person forms a common base with Satan and sets a condition allowing, give, and receive action with him. So this shame was the common base that Ham formed with Satan, and then covering it up from the motivation of that shame, then allowed, give, and receive action with Satan. And so this is why Ham's telling his brothers and the brothers coming in and covering their father was a sinful act. Prior to the fall, Adam and Eve were naked but not ashamed. Following the fall, they were ashamed of their nakedness. The feeling of being ashamed created a condition for Satan to act. Noah's family was to restore Adam's family, so Adam's family lost his faith. So in Noah's family, Noah established faith. He was he's now the father of faith. Prior to the fall, Adam and Eve were naked but were not ashamed. After the fall, Adam and Eve were ashamed of their nakedness and covered themselves. Noah's family had to remain unashamed of Noah's naked body and not cover him. Ham was unable to become the central figure for the foundation of substance. Now, I think if Ham had covered his father's body, but not out of a feeling of shame, but out of a concern for his physical well-being, then that would not have been a sin. But it was the emotion of shame that got him in trouble. That actually exposed him, right, as being not one with his father. And we saw that a lot, actually, with the people who were around Father, especially during the final 2 or 3 years that he was in his physical body, that they were sometimes ashamed. All right. So, but I also saw seeds of that even before that, even in the 1970s when I was in the seminary. But then, there was a group in Korea that said, okay, we should not be ashamed of our nakedness, so they would dance around naked. And there was a religious group that would dance around naked, and maybe even, there are all sorts of people in the world, and they misunderstand this thing with Noah, and so they take off. And then what happens with them is that they eventually became a sex cult, and that causes problems, right? So be careful how we understand this, that it was not the naked, it was the shame that got Ham in trouble here. It doesn't mean that we should all take off our clothes and not be ashamed. Okay? So FYI on that, yes. Yeah. Especially girls in the summertime. Keep yourself covered, all right? Okay. So the result, the foundation of faith was successful because Noah did what he was supposed to, but due to Ham's mistake, the foundation of faith failed. In fact, the foundation of substance never even got started because Ham never was able to stand in that able position. Accordingly, the foundation for the Messiah and Noah's family again failed. So this was another opportunity that was squandered by the failure of a human being to fulfill his portion of responsibility. And how did Ham acquire this feeling of disunity with his father? And the shame exposed his disunity. And where did that come from? Well, when Noah was building the ark, most likely, we see that Noah's wife's name is never mentioned in the Bible. Most likely that the wife was not so supportive of that situation. There was no, respect there. There was no love and respect. Maybe there was love, but there was no respect by the wife towards what Noah was doing for 120 years. Come on already. It's never going to rain. What are you doing? Go out and kill a deer for us instead, or whatever. Go put some food on the table. I don't know. So this disunity between the husband and wife, I think, and I think you, President, Reverend, you also preaches this, that this disunity between the husband and wife was reflected in the son's disunity with his father, and so so we can't just blame Ham. We have to also understand where this came from. Of course, he doesn't get off because it was his portion of responsibility, though, to be in awe, frankly, of his father. But what his father had done, despite all the opposition and despite all the mockery that he received. So, anyway, the end result was the same. Okay, so Ham was not able to stand in the position of Abel, and so the foundation of substance never even got off the ground. So the lessons that we can learn from Noah's family: God's will is absolute, but fulfillment thereof is relative. It requires a human portion of responsibility. And God's predestination regarding human beings: God established Abraham's family in the place of Noah's family and carried out a new providence. So Adam to Noah was how many generations? 10 generations, yes, 10 generations. And then Noah's family was established, and now Abraham's family is going to be established so that to give this another try. So God keeps trying. God never gives up. He never gives up. He keeps trying because he knows that his design of creation, his ideal of creation, is perfect, and it can deal with any situation. So just keep giving human beings a chance, and eventually they will come around, and eventually the providence will come to an end where Satan must yield all of humanity and all of the world to God. So we're going to go to Abraham's family next. First of all, let's look at a couple more lessons. Lessons to take note of: do not act simply according to your own way of thinking. If you do not know, ask God. God will teach you when the right time comes. But even I think Ham could have and should have known this on his own. The attitude that leads to the kingdom of heaven is to be meek, mild, and persevere. Wait till the right time comes. Be grateful and joyful. And everything is decided in an instant again. So human history was changed in an instant there. All right, Carrie?
I wish I could show you where it was in the Chung Sung Kyung, but I'm pretty sure I read where Father said if Noah had somehow made a formal offering, that there's something that Noah could have done that could have protected the victory of what he accomplished through the ark. Do you recall hearing anything like that?
Yeah, we'll have to, next time we come across in the Chung Sung Kyung, we'll have to make a note of it. But I think it was something like make a declaration and have each one make a pledge, so as to kind of draw a line under that victory, so that victory would not be lost. And make a pledge, I believe it was, yeah.
And so then somehow God, if that had happened, then God could have somehow continued even with...
Right.
So when I read that, I remember reflecting on Father was continually he would make declarations that I couldn't understand. But it seems to me that that's what that Father was claiming these things so that the providence could advance forward. Would you see?
Sure, yeah. That was one of Father's strategies, yes. When a victory is won, to make a declaration, to kind of draw a line under that, so that no matter what happened afterwards, it could not be, that victory could not be taken away by Satan.
And so probably that's one of the conditions that Father made, that True Mother Khan could become the True Mother, because he established that.
Yeah. We'll see that in much later in this presentation, we'll see that in 2010, remember, Father made Hak Jahan make certain promises. And now she did not keep those promises, but the fact that she made those promises still is some kind of a condition, I believe. Yeah. But anyway, he made the conditions so that even if there's failure, still the providence can continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, next time we see that, please let me know so that I can add it to the notes here. Okay, okay, then let's go then to Abraham's family. Okay, so this is now the third family that is going to be used by God to get the salvation restoration started. Remember, back in that chart, we saw that the time from Adam to Abraham is a time of preparing the foundation for resurrection, preparing the foundation for restoration, and so forth. So, of course, if they had succeeded, then they could have gone up the whole way. But at least the foundation then was being prepared during this first 2,000 years, biblical years, from Adam to Abraham. And this was just a symbolic time, so it's not actual 2,000 years. It's much, 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 much longer than that. All right, looking at the family of Abraham, as a result of Ham's fallen act, the providence of restoration in Noah's family was not fulfilled. On the other hand, God had absolutely predestined his will to accomplish the purpose of creation. Therefore, on the basis of Noah's loyal heart toward heaven, God called Abraham, who was the son of Terah, an idol seller, it says here, someone who was in the position to be most loved by Satan. Centering on Abraham's family, God recommenced his providence of restoration. So then there has to be a foundation for the Messiah. Yep, fallen human beings must be restored to the state in which they were originally created. And for this to happen, they must establish a relationship with the Messiah. And to establish a relationship with the Messiah, human beings must first establish the foundation for the Messiah. If there is no foundation for the Messiah, fallen people will kill the Messiah when he comes. So in this case, the foundation of faith, the central figure, the father of the family, all right, that's the principle and the foundation of faith. The basic principle is that the father is the central figure, so Abraham is the central figure. Object for the condition, symbolic offering, the three offerings, and we'll see that God told Abraham to make an offering, this offering has three stages, okay? And then there was a time period. And the foundation of substance, central figure was Isaac first, and then Jacob. Indemnity condition to remove the fallen nature. So we'll see how this works out in Abraham's family. And here it gets a little bit complicated. All right, foundation of faith, central figure Abraham. Go on. Genesis 1:28, Adam, 10 generations, 1,600 years from Adam to Noah. But then we see that during the time of Noah, God actually shortens the human lifespan, right? We saw that I already read it here. Here, where did I see that? Anyway, that God shortened the lifespan to 120 years, if you remember where that was. Okay, and sometime during the time of Noah, here we go in chapter 6, verse 3 of Genesis. And the Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years." Okay, so God shortened human lifespan. Until then, people were living hundreds of years, 900, 500, 900. And he shortened it, he says, to 120. So now it's again another 10 generations, but this time it's only 400 years because the lifespan has been shortened. So then Genesis 12:2 now. We go back beyond the Tower of Babel and so forth. 12:2. Now the Lord, start with 1, had said to Abram. Okay, so he changes his name later on. First, in the beginning, his name is Abram. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. Because his country, his father's house, this is Satan's realm. His father is an idol maker, or idol seller, I guess it says here. But anyway, he's involved in idols. So his father's in a position to be very loved by Satan, because Satan, he's making all these idols for Satan. So God tells Abram to get out of his father's house and go to a land that I will show thee. So just go, and I will tell you when you get there. Just go, and I'll tell you when you get there, okay? And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So he's going to use Abraham, or Abram here still, to bless all the families of the earth. In other words, give salvation to all the people of the earth through Abraham. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. Okay, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, or later Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son. Okay, so Lot is his nephew, okay, brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, all their property and so forth, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. So the Canaanites were there, okay? And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, Unto thy seed, in other words, your descendants, will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. So this is the foundation then for the Jewish people to claim Canaan as their land. Because here in Genesis 12:7, it says, Unto thy seed I will give this land. So this is what they point to. Okay, so here he leaves. So Abram originally he starts out in Ur of the Chaldeans, and that's today is a part of Iraq, and he goes to Haran, Syria, okay, which is today Syria, and he goes finally to Israel, finally, and this is equal to Noah building the ark for 120 years. So Abram also went out in faith. God didn't tell him, okay, show me the map. Here, this is the GPS coordinates. This is where I want you to go. No, he said, just go, and I'll show you, I'll tell you when you get there. So he just went out in faith from his father's house. Now, a number of things happen here now. He goes to Canaan, and then he goes to Egypt. But there was famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt and sojourned there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. So, telling his wife, listen, you're hot, all right? So we got a problem here. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. So because you're so good looking, they're going to kill me so that they can have you for their own. So what are we going to do about this? Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister. Okay, so pretend to be my sister instead of my wife, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. So you got to save my life here, okay, Sarah? Don't say you're my wife, and just say that you're my sister, because then they may take you, yes, but at least they won't kill me. That's his strategy. I don't know what she thought about that. They're still going to take you, they're still going to rape you, but at least they won't kill me. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman that she was very fair. And sure enough, yes, the Egyptians were very attracted to her. She was very sexy. the princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. So the princes, the sons, they went to the Pharaoh, the king, and said, wow, there's a really beautiful woman that just walked into our land. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. So sure enough, they took her into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and the asses and men servants and maidservants and she-asses and camels. And the Lord plagued. So now because they think that Abram is this girl's brother rather than her husband, they're trying to bribe him into giving her to the Pharaoh. So they're offering all kinds of things. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Okay, why sayest thou, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? Now therefore, behold, thy wife, take her and go thy way. So get out of here. She's causing me problems. God is plaguing me because you have fooled me into taking your wife, thinking that she was your sister. Okay, so the Pharaoh then kicks her out and says, yeah, take her, please, go ahead, get out of here. And the Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him that they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. All right, so in God's providence, this is had some important things. So here, all right, Abram and Sarah, and here it says Sarai, but she's we also call her Sarah. So they go to Egypt, and she winds up in Pharaoh's house. But the Lord protects her. God protects her. And actually, he gives all sorts of plagues to Pharaoh's house, and he finally figures out that she's not the sister, she's actually the wife. And so he sends her back to Abraham and tells them to leave. Now, this is a restoration of what happened between Adam, Eve, and the archangel, because in the case of the archangel, Eve went to the archangel, and she was, in fact, raped. An archangel did take her, and then the relationship with Adam was severed. So the archangel. So this is what is happening is the opposite, because here Pharaoh is the position of the archangel. So the archangel here refused to take Eve, or sent Eve back without having had sex with her. So this was an important restoration of the position of Adam. Or the position of Eve, actually, in Abram's situation. So in Noah's family's situation, in Noah, he had wife, children, animals, the earth of the ark, and Abram, and also here Abraham took his wife, or still Abram, took his wife, he took his nephew Lot, and he took his wealth. And he went to Egypt. He went to Canaan, but then from Egypt also went to Egypt, and then he went to Canaan. So that from there, so Abraham was confirmed as the central figure for the foundation of faith, and now he is able to make these symbolic offerings. So now Abraham, and thanks to Sarah, has confirmed his position as a person of faith. He got through this difficulty thanks to his wisdom or his wife's courage. To establish his position as the central figure for the foundation of faith. Are we okay? So these stories are not just stories, they are important events in God's effort to make right what went wrong in the Garden of Eden. So here now, God tells Abraham to make an offering. Okay, and then so he makes an offering there. He leaves Egypt, and so then, and he went on his journeys from the south even. Okay, all right, I'm not able to find it just right offhand. let's not waste much time here. Okay. So, anyway, God tells Abraham to make an offering. And he tells Abraham to make an offering of 3 stages, symbolizing or corresponding to the 3 orderly stages of growth within the growing period. And the formation stage would be represented by the dove and pigeon. And the growth stage would be represented by a goat and a ram. And the completion stage represented by a heifer. And what do these things symbolize? Well, here the Matthew 3:16, and Jesus, the formation stage. Not John 3:16, but Matthew 3:16. Where it says, "And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water, and lo, and the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove." We were talking about this yesterday, the Spirit of God. Hello? Spirit of God, dove. Okay? Okay? FYI, just saying, okay? Spirit of God descending like a dove, lighting upon him. Okay? I think another passage said that this was a Holy Ghost. Anyway, the Spirit of God. Okay, so the dove descended upon Jesus in Matthew 3:16 and also in other passages. So this is the dove, and so this symbolizing Jesus, the one who completes the formation stage, Old Testament providence, as in Matthew 5:17. Let's go ahead and read that. "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." So Jesus came to fulfill the law, fulfill the Old Testament. And the Old Testament, of course, was the formation stage in God's restoration providence. And Jesus represented that because he is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. Okay? And then the second stage from the bottom on Abraham's offering was the goat and the ram. And let's look at the John 1:29. "The next day John seeth Jesus coming unto him, and he said, Behold, the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." So the lamb or the ram, I think in the Korean translation it may be different, but anyway, this also, the lamb represents Jesus as well, the one who initiates the growth stage or the New Testament providence, the Lamb of God. And so this also represented Jesus in that sense. And then the heifer, what about the heifer? What does the heifer represent? Well, the heifer actually represents the bride. And we see this in the book of Judges, where the story of Samson, where Samson gives people a riddle, and the people are able to solve that riddle by exploiting or abusing his wife. And we'll look at Judges 14:16. "And Samson's wife wept before him and said, Thou dost but hate me and lovest me not. Thou hast put forth a riddle unto the children of my people, and hast not told it to me. And he said unto her, Behold, I have not told it to my father nor my mother, and shall I tell it to thee?" Okay, this is 14. Oh, I see. It goes to 18. All right, but anyway, let's continue reading. "And she wept before him, please tell me the answer. Please tell me the answer. Please tell me the answer. And she wept before him in the 7 days." She's crying. 7 days. Please tell me, please tell me, please tell me. Oh, my goodness. 7 days she's crying, all right, while their feast lasted. "And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her," oh, man, Samson, you got yourself in trouble, didn't you? "Because she lay sore upon him, and she told the riddle to the children of her people." So, boy, I tell you, she told the riddle to the children of her people. So they couldn't get the answer to this riddle from Samson himself. So they used his wife instead. Okay. And the men of the city said unto him on the seventh day before the sun went down, and this is the answer to the riddle, what is sweeter than honey? That was the riddle. And what is stronger than the lion? And he said unto them, if he had not plowed with my heifer, he had not found out my riddle. Plowed with my heifer. Okay, obviously the heifer represents the wife. And what does a plow do? Right, yes, okay. So the plowing with the heifer would definitely, I think, symbolize or pretty much communicate a sexual intercourse situation, okay? Because the plow goes into the ground and like that, right? So, yes. So anyway, and turns it over, yes. So the heifer represents the bride. Okay? The heifer represents the bride, as we see here in Judges 14:18. So this represents the second coming, the completion stage, the completed testament providence. Because the completion stage requires a husband and wife, right? Because each are completing each other, as we saw in chapter 1. So, be careful. Yeah. Be careful. And, if the husband and wife are not together, this can happen. If you're not united, this can happen. So Revelation 19:7, Feast of the Lamb, age of the wife is the age of the heifer. Okay. So this was the three-stage offering that Abraham was told to make there in Genesis. Going back to Genesis now. So, what happens with this offering? Was this offering successful? So, the meaning of the sacrifices was that the symbol of perfected cosmos that is completed through the process of the three stages of growth. So, this was the meaning there, that it was symbolizing the whole process of growth. And it was intended to restore horizontally, and in one event, all the vertical providential indemnity conditions that had accumulated through the three generations of Adam, Noah, and Abraham. The horizontal restoration of vertical history. This is one of the principles that the Father often talked about. So if you think about it, there's history, Father says the history time, all right, is horizontal, is vertical. And each generation is horizontal. And stuff happens during the timeline as you're going, and then all the stuff that happened in the past on this vertical timeline can be restored in one event or one generation horizontally. And so also Father during his lifetime restored all the mistakes that happened throughout history. So Father in his life was about really the horizontal restoration of vertical history. So this is what this offering also was intended to do, to restore horizontally in one event all the stuff, all the mistakes and bad things that had happened through the generations of Adam, Noah, and Abraham, and all the 20 generations in between, right? 10 from Adam to Noah, and another 10 from Noah to Abraham. That was the intention. God wanted to just, in one fell swoop, solve everything. So this was an important offering. It was a very important offering. And it was intended to restore through indemnity all the conditions which signified the number 3, and which had been invaded by Satan, thereby completing the entire providence of restoration in a single stroke. Yes?
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you.
Okay.
But I cannot understanding the previous slide. Heifer is the completion stage, the symbol of the completion stage. And then what is the relation with Judges 14:18 story?
So Judges shows that a heifer represents the wife or the bride. And the completion stage is the stage where husband and wife have to go together.
That's That's right.
completing each other. And also, at the top of the growth stage, we meet the Messiah as in the position of the bride. That he is the groom, and we are the bride. The world, the sinful world, is the bride. Christianity is the bride.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes.
Just really hit me what you said about Father's life was about restoring horizontally all the mistakes vertically. It's kind of a mind blower in a way that within one lifetime that he not only had to uncover all the mistakes that happened and be able to explain them, but to restore them. So I guess would you say that for all of eternity, we need to study Father's life, because that becomes the key also for us to understand how to overcome, right? He's the one that completed everything. So we have the teaching of the divine principle, but also it's important to study his life to see how he absolutely overcame everything.
Yes. But also, Reverend, you would emphasize that, Father did things because he was restoring through his life all the vertical history. Does not mean that we do what Father did.
Right.
Because our mission is different. His mission is different. His mission is unique.
Good clarification.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, the meaning of the three-stage sacrifice offering to complete the entire providence of restoration in one single stroke. This was a pretty good strategy on God's part, and it was an opportunity to just resolve the whole situation right there. And how was Abraham to make the symbolic offering? He should have cut all the symbolic offerings into two pieces, all right? Because now, remember, God divides Cain and Abel. He divides good and evil. So as Adam was cut into two effectively through his sons Cain and Abel, so also each of these pieces of offering, the heifer had to be cut in two, the goat and ram had to be cut in two, the pigeon and dove had to be cut in two, all of them symbolizing the division between good and evil, good and evil, good and evil, okay? But he actually failed to cut the dove and the pigeon in two. Okay, I guess it's in Genesis 15. Let's see here. It says it's in 15. Okay. 8, 13. Okay, so here, actually, it's in Genesis 15, beginning in verse 9. And he said unto him, this is God talking, take me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took upon him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. Okay, so in 15, 9, and 10. So this one verse, you see, really has incredible importance in God's providence. And so he divided them not. The birds he divided not. Yes. So now, this was the separation of good and evil that was supposed to happen. Purpose of the providence of salvation is restoration through the sovereignty of goodness. So Adam's family, separation of Cain and Abel, Adam being the source of good and evil. So Adam could not be the central figure of the foundation of faith. So instead, he was symbolically divided between Cain and Abel became the central figure, and also the central figure in this foundation of substance as well. In Noah's family, separation of Noah's family from the people of the sinful world, centered on the ark, judgment by flood, and the separation of good and evil. So there were the people inside the ark, people outside the ark. There was this separation. In Abraham's family, separation of the world of Satan's sovereignty from God's sovereignty in Abraham's family. Okay? Sanctifying the offering by removing the blood of death. So the blood of, spiritually, this is blood of death. I mean, biologically, if you were to examine it, there would be no difference, but spiritually, this is the blood of death. A condition to sanctify the offerings of the blood of death that entered into humankind through the blood relationship which Adam and Eve had with Satan. Okay? So what was the effect of not dividing the offerings? No separation of good and evil. It remained under, and that means that it remains under the sovereignty of evil. So the entire thing remains under the sovereignty of evil. Following the creation of humankind, the archangel targeted human beings. In Adam's family, Satan targeted Cain and Abel at the time of their offering. Noah's family, Satan targeted Noah's family after the flood. Abraham's family, Satan targeted Abraham's family after the symbolic offering. So this happened now after he had had that experience in Egypt. So he's, as a result of going to Egypt and doing well there, he now is qualified to be the central figure who is of faith so that he can make the offering. So, but he didn't make the offering properly, and so then there was a problem. So here then in 15:11 it says, and when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. So then Satan came down and claimed the offering, symbolized by those of fowls or the birds, the symbols of Satan, and this offering failed. And when the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. So this is now said, no, this is an indemnity condition of greater indemnity condition. Very simple mistake. But now Abraham's descendants will have to go into a land where there are strangers, in other words, into Egypt, and they'll have to stay there for 400 years. And eventually, of course, they wind up as slaves there. So, attention to detail is important. So here, this was an offering that was going to bring restoration in one fell swoop. But because it was so important, the failure to make the offering was also incredibly important. And so that is why there was this greater indemnity condition that came as a result of this. So the result of the failure of the offering, failed to restore the foundation of faith, 400 years of slavery in Egypt, period of punishment, period for separation of humanity, and now it's necessary to indemnify the 400 years from Noah to Abraham. And providence prolonged over 3 generations through Isaac to Jacob, and the offering of Isaac. So if the symbolic offering had been successful, the foundation of substance would have been laid centering on Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, of course, being the son of a maidservant, basically a concubine, because Sarah had become old and she thought she could not have a child, and so she allowed her husband to have sex with her maidservant, and Ishmael was born from there. But then, lo and behold, she did have a child. Sarah did have a child, and he was Isaac. So,
Tim?
Yes.
So, if I understand what you just said, had Abraham been successful in the offering, then Ishmael and Isaac would have been restoring the Cain-Abel relationship.
Yeah, that's what it says here, yes.
That's what you just said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that mean it was predestined that...
well, the answer I know is going to be no, but anyway, continue.
Well, I always thought, I always kind of wondered about Hagar and Ishmael, because was that a good thing? That Sarah didn't have faith and told and asked, and encouraged Abraham to have a child with Hagar. Was that supposed to happen?
Well, during the period of indirect dominion, rather than supposed to happen or not supposed to happen, basically it did happen, right? And then, so when it happens, God takes the result of these things and uses them to push His providence forward. But if it had not happened, would that have been a bad thing then? If Sarah had said, no, I know I'm going to have a child, and then finally given birth, would that have been a bad thing? I don't think so.
Maybe she would have had 2 children, and then they would have been the Cain-Abel.
But God would have figured something out.
So someone once said, you hear about people say, oh, God works in mysterious ways, and then someone once said, God works in any way that he can. So would you say to that?
Yeah, probably, yes.
Okay, thank you.
He works with what he has, what he's given. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but in any situation, he is drawing a line, the shortest possible line between reality and the ideal, and doing what's necessary to make people take at least one step along that line. Okay, so because this offering failed, and the now it's necessary for him to offer Isaac, and so this is also an indemnity condition, a greater indemnity condition. He didn't cut the pigeon and the dove, so now he has to actually offer his son Isaac as an offering, and he comes close, but it doesn't actually happen. But it comes awfully close. So now, let's go to Genesis 22, right? Yes, in Genesis 22. So, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thy only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. Boom, wow. So God tells Abraham, take your son and burn him to death. Make a burnt offering of him. That's pretty extreme. So take him into the land of Moriah and offer him for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell thee of. So Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place far off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. All right, so he's leaving his servants behind, and just the 2 of them, Abraham and Isaac, are going to go now to the place where the offering is going to be made. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac. So Isaac is carrying the wood now, his son, and he took the fire in his hand. So he's got some kind of fire there, maybe a burning branch or something, or maybe a candle, and a knife, and they went both of them together. So in making an offering, he has to cut the offering, right? He learned that already. Now he has to cut the offering. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Aren't we missing something? Didn't you forget something? Yeah, things are getting serious here. And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told them of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, tied him up, okay, and laid him on the altar above the wood, upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am, or here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Whew, that was close. So Abraham actually had the knife in his hand, and he raised his hand now to cut his son, to kill his son. And the angel of the Lord stopped him and said, Now I know. I didn't know before, but now I know that you fear God.
Tim?
Yes.
I just wonder if you have any comment on, I thought about how when we understand about child sacrifice in the pagan religions, that somehow God was testing Abraham's heart, and he had to show a greater filial piety than the people who sacrificed their children to the false gods. Abraham had to be willing, to sacrifice his only son, and that was a test of sorts, that he showed greater filial piety because people at that time sacrificed their children to false gods. Does that make sense, or am I? You don't know.
I don't think of it necessarily in that way, but I think it more of in the sense that God had blessed Abraham and said, your seed will, prosper and become many, many, many. But now God is telling him to kill his only son. So that would seem to be a contradiction on the part of God. That, how am I going to have a lineage if you're telling me to kill my only son? But still, Abraham was willing to go ahead with that and showed that he was willing to do that. Okay. Anyway, it turns out well in the next verse, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by the horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for the burnt offering instead of his son. So eventually the ram was offered instead of Isaac. So here, Abraham was the key figure of failure, just as Adam was the key figure of failure. And a core ground rule of God's providence is that if someone fails their role as a central figure, God does not use that person as a central figure again. Nonetheless, God commanded Abraham, who failed in the symbolic offering, to sacrifice Isaac. The basis on which Abraham could offer the symbolic offering again was there is a condition in principle that the providence to lay the foundation for the Messiah must be completed at the third attempt. And this is a condition that, because Satan in Garden of Eden invaded at the top of the growth stage. So the formation stage and the growth stage are vulnerable to Satan's invasion. But the third stage, number 3, is not. So one way or another, sometimes it's complicated, but that third stage is going to get accomplished. Because Satan invaded the 2 generations of Adam and Cain, the principle of restoration through indemnity allowed God to be able to restore the 2 generations of Abraham and Isaac. So Satan took 2 generations. God gets to take 2 generations. So the Shimjong foundation established by Abel and Noah through the successful completion of their symbolic offerings was a condition by which God could work to have Abraham offer the sacrifice again. Shall we take a break? Okay, let's do that. We'll come back at 10:46, right?